Welcome back to MGD 111 Photoshop 1. Today we're going to talk about file type, the third pillar of understanding Photoshop. So let's go to our document here. A lot of times if you have looked at pictures on the internet or straight off your digital camera, you'll see it says JPG. That means JPEG. Don't worry about what JPEG stands for. Just understand that that is usually the mode that digital images captured in initially. And we want to use that typically for when we're doing something for on-screen or online. Now, just as we have different resolution requirements and we have different color mode requirements, we also have different file type requirements for a particular use. So what we need to do in order to change from a JPEG to a different format is we need to do a save as. So if I were using this for a website, for example, JPEG is great. But if I were using this in print, I'd want to use what's called a TIFF file. And again, don't worry about what that means. It's TIFF. But what I need to do is go to File, Save As, and there's a few things up here that we need to be aware of. And by the way, if your window looks like this and it's really tiny, click on this little triangle near the name here, and that'll give you a much bigger and more information-filled window. So the first thing up here is the name of the file. You know, it's sled.jpg. The next part here is the folder that we want to put in. You may remember when we set our preferences that it saves to the same folder automatically. We can pick a different folder if we want. We can also click over here if we wanted to save it to the desktop or some other place, but we want to keep it in the same place here. And then the third thing is, and this is the one that we're really concerned with here, is down here it says JPEG. If we click on where it says Format, you'll see we have a whole bunch of different formats that we can choose from. There's one called Photoshop. That's just sort of for a document that's not quite ready to be formatted. We've got layers and things that we're processing. You may get some that come in that format. You're going to want to eventually change it to a JPEG or a TIFF. JPEG 2000, about 15 years ago, that sounded pretty futuristic, but we don't worry about that. JPEG Stereo, don't worry about that one either. The main ones are JPEG. You can save something as a PDF. And then there's one down here called TIFF. So if I click on TIFF and I save it, it's going to ask me some questions. It's going to ask me if I want to compress it and all that. We're not going to worry about that. Just make sure it says no compression for now. And I click OK, and you'll notice it's now called sled.tiff. And you'll also notice that in my folder here, we now have two images. We have sled.jpg and sled.tiff. They are not, in fact, the same file. And in fact, if you look at it, oops, let me zoom back out here a bit. There we go. You'll notice that the JPEG is 512 kilobytes. The TIFF is 5.8 megabytes. Why is it so big? It's 100 times bigger. Well, the reason is that JPEG actually has fairly compressed color information. What you're looking at on a screen is not as detailed as something you're going to see in print. I know that seems kind of counterintuitive, but it's true. What the TIFF format does is it unlocks and unfolds some of that color information. It decompresses it, and it makes it into a bigger file. Now, very important thing to learn here is if we're saving a file to use on the internet, JPEG is good. TIFF will not work. You cannot use a TIFF on a web page. It simply will not work. There are other formats you can, and we'll study those later. Also, if you try to use a JPEG in a printed piece, it might work. It's possible it'll work. And it's also very possible that it will just fall apart on you. So TIFF is what we want to use for printed pieces, JPEG usually for online. And again, there's more to it than just that, but we need to understand that there is a very important function of color mode, resolution, and file type. If you get any of those wrong, you can mess up your project to where it won't work. So we need to make sure, get in the habit of processing our files correctly. And again, we'll study that in much greater detail later. So thank you.